A pretty long time ago we had a look at Phanteks Mini Phanteks P500A, a pretty amazing case, great quality, surprising compatibility and overall just an airflow beast. But now it's time for the big guns, meet the P500A. It's like the P200A but bigger and better, like triple 140 fans better and 140 fan in the back better and airflow, like a lot of it. It will hurt your CPU cooler's feelings. So this is the P500A, and before we go over the pros and cons, let's quickly go over every spec. There are two versions of this case, a non-RGB and a RGB one. The main difference comes in, who would have guessed it, RGB. The non-RGB version comes with two black 140mm fans pre-attached in the front, while the RGB version comes with three Phanteks in-house made 140 RGB fans in the front and a built-in RGB controller with its control button next to the I/O panel. The model that we will be looking at today is RGB, or technically DRGB, because Phanteks DRGB connector is still a thing, but in the end it is ARGB, it's the RGB version. Starting off with support. Being a solid 510mm high, 505mm long and 240mm wide, this big chunk of hardware heaven still classifies as a mid-tower case. Inside we'll find support for the standard motherboard sizes like ATX, Micro ATX and ITX, but also eATX with a limit of 280mm in width. In terms of I/O, we've got everything what I would expect nowadays. Two USB 3.0 Type A, a USB 3 Type C Gen 2, and a combined microphone and headphone jack, and the aforementioned RGB buttons in case you have the DRGB version. While the DRGB version comes with two buttons, one for the mode and one for the color, the non-RGB version comes with a reset button. The big overall shaped power button is located a bit to the left in the center of the top panel. For the GPU we can go with up to 435mm long cards, so as of now I am not aware of any card that would not fit in here, not the beefiest 3090. In CPU cooler height for air coolers, Phanteks made it possible to use up to 190mm high coolers. 190, like what cooler is 190 and where can I get it? Unlike the P200A, the P500A has its PSU again in the button in its own separate PSU tunnel. By removing the two thumb screws in the back, we can mount the PSU directly to it and shove everything back in. For the length, there are three different lengths that are predetermined if you want to use one of the hard drive cage spots just in front of it. Ignoring any specifics on these drives, if you would use up to two drives, you will limit the PSU to 250mm, and using four of these HDD brackets, you will limit it down to 195. But to put this into perspective, Be Quiet's Dark Power 12 spitting 1000 watts comes in at 175mm, so you are gonna be alright. Now with that covered, let's go over the hard drives cause it's going to be a wild ride. By default, this thing is a freaking data hoarder. Three 2.5-inch SSD drive spots behind the motherboard tray. Additionally, there is a carton box containing a bunch of installation hardware like screws, zip ties, and a refreshingly complete installation guide. But there are also two hard drive brackets. Now, how these hard drive cages work is that there are two possible spots in the front of the power supply tunnel. You can install your cage either at the very front or right next to it. And it's also these two positions that will predetermine how long your power supply can be. Additionally to that, using the position at the very front will also limit the amount of space that you will potentially occupy by using a radiator. So just keep in mind that if you use the very first spot, you will no longer use any 360 or 420 radiators. To install them, you have to pre-install the hard drive, position it with the hard drive pre-installed, and the hooks underneath sliding into the case and then just pull it in. To remove them again, you have to lift that little latch and pull everything out again. Now a really cool feature about these is that they are stackable. Just slide one on top of each other and you can use two hard drives or two SSDs on a single position. Okay, so by default we are now looking at 3 SSDs and 2 hard drives or 2 additional SSD spots. And I say by default for a very good reason. Phanteks cases usually come with a bunch of different optional upgrades that can be purchased extra to expand compatibility. And for the P500A, the amount of these upgrades is, or possibilities, it's ridiculous. The standard amount of 2 hard drives can be expanded to a total of 10. By getting additional stackable HDD brackets for the space behind the power supply tunnel, we are looking at 4 hard drives. Then we can remove these Phanteks covers here by removing the thumb screw behind them and slide them out. From here we can take the same hard drive cages and just stack them like crazy until we max out the case at 10 3.5-inch drives. It's completely nuts. And as a really big plus, these hard drives are then cooled as hell. But just keep in mind that you will inevitably lose the radiator spot in the front. But if you think Phanteks is done with ridiculous extensions, you are wrong. Let's start with an easy one. Phanteks includes a piece of plastic meant to be mounted using one of the two available positions on top of the PSU tunnel. There you can mount the optionally available Phanteks PCIe riser and use the vertical PCIe brackets in the back of the case. I guess you should be able to use any brand PCIe riser, but you need to make sure that it ends in a 90-degree angle and that the holes align. Then there's this anti-sag bracket, seemingly meant for GPUs. It's supposed to be installed in the back of the case after having installed all of your PCIe cards. And just place it down, screw it in from the back, and you're done. Now, I really can't tell why I would need this. GPU sag problems usually tend to happen at the end of the card, not at the PCIe bracket thingy, or at least I never had that issue, but it's free, so Now coming to the extremely ridiculous optional upgrade. This case supports dual systems, like in 2 mainboards, 2 CPUs, dual. By getting the optional ITX bracket and performing a small amount of adjustments and removals, you will be able to mount an additional ITX motherboard on the top fan spots of the case. What the fuck? Unfortunately, I do not have that bracket, nor will I ever need it with what the case will be doing from now on, so I can check what can or cannot be installed on that second system, nor what restrictions the second system will put on the first one. But no matter the consequences, it's a really cool thing that this is even possible inside a case like the P500A. In the end, the case looks good, and it's like a normal case, which something that dual system cases tend not really to be like. And this just proves to me the insane amount of ingenuity that went into this thing. Having support for 10 hard drives inside a case that doesn't look shameful was already enough, but this is just too much. Let's now finally get to the reason why I bought this case. Fans. For a little backstory, until now I used the Acer High 450 as the case fan benchmark setup. It was okay, but I was forced to reposition the back fan to the top for 140mm benchmarks due to the back being limited to 120. Now, the P500A is one of the very few cases that come with 140mm support in the back, which in its own would already be amazing. But the P200A that we already reviewed was just a really great performer overall, and the front panel was airflowy as hell, nothing to nag. And as it turns out, I was right to trust Phanteks in my switch to the P500A. This thing is a cooling beast. Triple 140 or 120 support in the front, triple 120 or dual 140 support in the top, and the already mentioned 140 or 120 support in the back. The front panel uses the same highly effective mesh, the top uses a good grade filter, and the PSU has its own fabric filter removable from the back side. On the water cooling front, Phanteks did not make any cuts. Up to 360mm radiator support in the top, and up to 420 support in the front. It's so rare that a case this size has 420 support, and it's freaking amazing. And this whole thing is so fucked up. I still have my Alpha Cool 420 red laying around, and out of all of the cases that came into here, this is the very first one that actually got 420 support. It's this is meant to be, but I can't. The fans used in here are some unnamed Phanteks 140mm DRGB thingies, and I'm just calling them unnamed because there is nothing marked on them, nor does the specification list reveal to me which one they are. The portion above it mentioned that you can optimize your case with SK DRGBs, but it doesn't specify it was optimized using them. That being said, let's be honest, the images look very much alike, so let's just roll with it. These are Phanteks SK fans, and they are pretty freaking good. But there is still a very important point to cover: RGB. Ultimately, this is the RGB version, so it would be a shame not to cover the great work that Phanteks put in here. The included fans illuminate in the same way as the P200A did, with the front mesh letting a ton of RGB through, And here, it's just more. At the top of the front panel, Phanteks hid a bit of extra RGB in form of a small block. But the real beauty, in my opinion, is this really smooth line covering the complete side of the PSU tunnel. Like, oh. As mentioned before, there are two buttons next to the I/O panel, one controlling the color and the other one controlling the RGB mode. All of this is being produced by the included RGB controller, which is powered by a single SATA block. And here is where the whole Phanteks DRGB thing comes in. Phanteks still uses that proprietary port. But it's not all bad. They left an extension possibility, cause guess what? Pretty much every Phanteks device uses this plug, and they added a 3-pin addressable RGB header in case you wanna go with motherboard control and just ditch the whole DRGB thing. And they added a 3-pin ARGB extension so that you can mount additional ARGB devices to the whole RGB controller thing. And as long as I can use motherboard control or I can expand everything, I'm okay with it. The last big topic to cover will be cable management. As the case is pretty big, there is more than enough space in the back, but Phanteks helps you out with a shit ton of Velcro tie spread across the whole case. Of course, there are more than enough cable cutters around the motherboard, and this very convenient and stylish slidable GPU power cable hider. But the most important cable management aspect that we did not cover yet are these Phanteks covers. Yes, they are actually not only meant to hide hard drive mounting holes, but by loosening the thumb screws in the back, then just slide them to the left and right, you are revealing only so much of the cable as you want. If done right, this creates an amazing and overall very clean look. But before we cover anything what I particularly liked or disliked, let's just sit back a moment and enjoy. So, I freaking love this thing. Like, no joke, I'm literally pissed that I will now be permanently reserving this for fan benchmarks. Not only because I was extremely close to use my 420 red again, but the case is just super easy to build in, airflowy as hell, and therefore cooling performance is just excellent. And it looks so where was I? Anyway, amazing case, I love it, I think it looks strong, just it looks performance. But take my looks part with a grain of salt, that's my take on it. Okay, at this point I kinda covered the what I liked section here. Airflow, perfect. Hardware compatibility, nothing to nag there. Fan compatibility, best in class. You could argue that 3 140 spots in the top would be better, and definitely would, but 140 support in the back is so rare and useful, it just pushed it to the front of my list. Bottom clearance, perfect. RGB, smooth, and the little design aspects like angled edges everywhere are just clean. And let's not forget the ridiculous extent of upgradability and the fact that I can potentially mount 2 independent systems in here, which is already crazy on its own, and that paired with the fact that I can stuff this case with 10 3.5-inch drives is just incredible. And not forget that 10 hard drives and it doesn't look ugly. That's really important. And as a little bonus to me, Phanteks did not pre-install the included cages to begin with, which just makes my life a lot easier. As the last I like it point, I would say the tempered glass side panel. Not only does it feel incredibly high quality, and it can be opened toolless thanks to the magnets, but Phanteks also made sure to make it real airtight by using these rubber insulators around the glass. And of course it can be removed if you open it far enough. Overall, looking at all of the cases I had before, this is by far the most impressive ones in terms of compatibility and sheer cooling performance. Really good job, Phanteks. And I'm really pissed that I won't be using this for my editing rig. Like, this is, kid you not, my new favorite case and I can't use it. But as nice as it is, I have a couple of improvement suggestions. Let's begin with a pretty obvious one. You need to improve quality control. Not only did the case have a small wiggle to begin with, but the second USB port was not as straight as the first one, making it look kinda, yeah. That's just the type of stuff that should be improved to make the case live up to its full potential, because I'm certain it is pretty much perfect, just a bit better. Then there's a mini issue that I encountered during the filming of my B-rolls about the additional hard drive spots in the front of the case. To mount these brackets, we first need to remove the plastic Phanteks brackets. Unfortunately, the cables coming from the front fans are preventing me to do so, because they are using the holes and therefore preventing me from sliding that plastic thing far enough to make it come out. And taking the cables just out is easier said than done if you look at the insane amount of cable mass that is already present in the case by default. Of course this is doable, I did it. It is just a really annoying step if it is the very first one you do if you open up the case. But there is also a pretty easy solution to that. Instead of that slide out plastic thing approach, you could use 2 of these thumb screws instead of just 1. That way it would always be easier to remove the bracket and it would still be stable enough to not wiggle around. Or just remove the plastic thing and move the back screw to the center and hope that it doesn't vibrate. It's also a possibility. And the last big point would be something that I just think is a huge missed opportunity. I don't get why Phanteks did not reuse the central mounted fan up concept from the P500A. In the end, there was more than enough space behind the plastic hiders for a full 3 set of 120 fans. Just a couple of extra holes in the brackets behind them and a mesh cluster on the back panel, and you would have created an absolute airflow monster capable of taking off. It wouldn't be a necessity, just like the additional HED spots. If you want them, use them. If not, leave them. I don't know, I think it's a shame they didn't do that, but I hope future versions will have that possibility. Other than that, freaking amazing case. I love it, I can only recommend it. On the price side, as of writing the script, it is available for around $150 or 150 euros, which is very much alright considering what you get here. But okay, this was my take on the P500A, but in case you want to keep watching, have a look at the P200A. This one has the side mountable fans and it looks like a miniature edition of the P500A. Okay, hope to see you on the next one, and bye bye.